Hi, in this video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a resource called Simmons Insight. Simmons is a part of a company, MRI Simmons, that conducts a national survey of 25,000 Americans every 6 months, and then again every year. There are two surveys, it does a 6-month survey and a 1-year survey. And it spans over 600 attitudes, opinions, and segmentations, measuring more than 500 product categories over 8,000 brands. This data is expressed using or is shared using a crosstab format. And I'm going to give you a tour of that right now, of how you can access the data by constructing profiles and crosstabs with it. To get started, you'll go to the Pace University library page. Once you're on this page, look for databases, and from there navigate to the letter S for Simmons. Here you'll find Simmons Insights. The name has changed over time. Sometimes it's MRI Simmons, sometimes just Simmons. Just look for S something, and it's going to pull up somewhere here. When you click on Simmons Insight, it'll take you to the Simmons website, and you'll then be able to access all the resources out there. Here we are into the MRI Simmons interface. Now, before I dig any deeper into this, recognize the fact that Simmons is a survey does surveys every year, does 2 surveys, 6-month survey and a 1-year survey. And these surveys are then available through the interface we're looking at. So we're using the interface merely to access what's in a large spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is too large to be meaningfully examined. Eyeballing it would not yield much insight, and therefore the crosstabs and profiles help us. In here, you'll see a list of all the surveys that exist done by Simmons. So you can see Simmons Connect has been conducted for many years now, and same with the adult survey also. As I noted earlier, there's a 6-month survey and a 12-month survey. You're seeing those showing up here. Now, Simmons Connect doesn't go all the way to the latest year, the current year, 2022. Part of the reason for that is that the current data costs more money, and we're using the educational license out here that only affords us access to 2019. For most products and services, unless you're looking at new to the world products, the data should hold up fairly accurately between 2019 and today. Let's begin by examining the options available within Simmons. Broadly speaking, you can do one of two things. You can examine a quick report, which is a profile of a product, brand, or group, or you can do a crosstab, which allows you to draw comparisons between 2 or more groups. Let's begin by looking at a profile via a quick report. So first things first, I'm going to ensure that we're using the Spring 2019 Simmons Connect Plus database, or whatever is a relevant database you want to look at. Next, click on Quick Reports. Now, sometimes what happens is when you click on Quick Reports, the database might change. Fortunately, this hasn't happened. Our next step is going to be to look at a profile. Now, over the last couple of years, there has been this excitement around restaurants like Red Mango and 16 Handles and the like. If you know where I'm going with this, you know this is part of the froyo revolution. So let's take a look at frozen yogurt then, which is what froyo is short for. So let's learn more about frozen yogurt. Specifically, let's examine who is it that's consuming frozen yogurt. So let's type in frozen yogurt here, see what happens. As I type in frozen yogurt, the autocomplete presents a couple of options. Now, it doesn't look like the Google autocomplete because what it's trying to autocomplete for us is questions asked in the survey. Let me step back then. Previously, I noted the Simmons data is derived from an annual survey conducted of about 25,000 American households. The survey as such is very, very long. After all, it covers hundreds of products and about 8,000 brands. Also assess our attitudes, opinions, interests, and so on. So collectively, about 60,000 consumer elements are gathered out here. So it's a very, very long survey. So when you type in, for example, frozen yogurt, it's going to pull up a whole bunch of options out here for frozen yogurt. You can drill down by narrowing down to a category that's relevant. I don't find one here that makes sense to me. I'm going to look through then on the right, see where I can find an option here. So as I navigate down, I find here, yes, okay, food, frozen yogurt, store-bought, frozen yogurt, eat. Okay, that sounds like a good possibility out here. People buying frozen yogurt in a store, okay? Then there are brands out here below that of frozen yogurt. And then you can learn here about more options like how many frozen yogurt buckets somebody has consumed over a span of time. So as you can tell, there are many, many options appearing out here now under definition. So let me go right back up to the top. Of these, I think frozen yogurt, this is the best match I can find. So I'm going to click on here, food, frozen yogurt, store-bought, frozen yogurt, store-bought, eat. Response, yes. This means that when asked about whether people eat frozen yogurt from stores, the answer is yes. So if I select this, now we have the option showing up here. Having done this, my next step is going to be to move this particular variable selected to target. Now it tells me a couple of things out here. One of them is that there are 4,936 people in the sample out of about 25,000 that actually eat frozen yogurt. Second of all, this is equivalent to 338,000. That's about 48 million American households. When I run the analysis, it shows the information we saw before on the right and some new information on the left. One of them is that this number of 4,936, or an equivalent of 48 million, represents 19.67% of the US population. The US population here is of 245 million households. And that's derived from the fact that our sample is not exactly 25,000, but pretty close, 23,615, which is equivalent to the US population number of households or other of 245 million. So 48 million divided by 245 million is approximately 19.67%. That's where the number comes from. Okay, so we know that there are, 1 in 5 people then in America is buying frozen yogurt. Not so exotic. Okay. Let's go further then. What is it about these people? Well, their income is $69,000 on average, well, median. And we also know their age. We know their employment status, what percentage are married. And having these numbers now allows us to compare this group to the other group. In a sense, you may want to then look at, okay, so frozen yogurt, yes, people have an age of 48.6. What about those who don't eat frozen yogurt? Is that number, lower, higher? Just from, general knowledge, I know the number for the median age of an American is far lower than 48.6. It's more close to 40, right? So then it seems to me that a froyo consumer is going to tend to be an older, relatively older person with relatively higher income, resources. We can also learn more about demographics here, like, for example, their education level and so on. You can see out here that Most of the consumers of the biggest income segment of consumers of Froyo are in the $100,000 plus group. Of course, we don't have to limit ourselves to just looking at another thing useful out here is to note that it's that 61% of the consumers of this are female. Okay, now we can also go and dig deeper here and learn more about Froyo users. Let's say if you want to find out about where they live, you can look at maps, you can look at day in the life or their social media profile. Let me click on social media profile on the stage. So now we can learn here about what social media platforms do they visit. That is Froyo consumers. They go on Facebook, 40% of them have visited Facebook in the last 7 days, and so on and so forth. Okay, let's add some more nuance to this variable now. We have here information about frozen yogurt, eaten, yes. What if you wanted to drill down a bit further and learn more about not just frozen yogurt consumers, but frozen yogurt consumers in a certain area? We'll go back here to frozen yogurt and select yes for frozen yogurt store-bought. We also want to know about people who are, let's say, from New Jersey. So if I type NJ out, let's see what pops up. So and they're eating frozen yogurt and not or they're from New Jersey. I did that kind of fast, so let me do this part one more time. So when you click on here, there are a couple of prompts that appear and or and so on. I want to know about people who not only eat Froyo but are also from New Jersey, so the two have got to be combined using a Boolean and. It might be tempting to just type in AND. Don't do that because Simmons is very picky about the syntax. It wants you to use, so whenever prompted, your best bet is to just select the prompt rather than typing in AND. Now, when I plugged in AND, a red outline appears around this text box, which is telling me that at this stage, the syntax is incorrect or incomplete. Quite naturally, it is, I know. So if I type in NJ now, it's going to prompt me for a number of different options here, like domestic travel, so on and so forth. What I'm looking for is the state of New Jersey. So I'm going to pick the lifestyle demographics category under state code for New Jersey. There we have it. Now we have a profile of Froyo consumers who are in New Jersey. I'm going to move this to target and then run this. Since the last thing I looked at was social media profile, that's what pulls up first. Let's go back to dashboard and now select demographic profile. Now, let me highlight a couple of things here. First things first, you'll notice our sample is much smaller now, just 201. Because we're looking at Froyo consumers in New Jersey. You're also going to notice that Froyo consumers in New Jersey are more affluent than those in the rest of the country. As far as age is concerned, it's not much different. The number we had for the entire country is 48, now we have 49, so that's not much different. You'll recall that Froyo consumers are mostly female. That trend holds up in New Jersey also. In fact, it's even more so in New Jersey than the rest of the country. But that was one example of how you can profile or examine a profile of a group using a quick report. Let's take a look at one more example. I'll clear all this. And there was a movie on Netflix that got a lot of attention. Movies from about 3-4 years ago called Game Changers, which highlighted the diets of many people that that have changed over time, and they focused on this move shift from being a carnivore to the other extreme, being a vegan. The movie featured amongst many people, amongst others, they featured Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Carolina Panthers, I believe. Or was it a different team? Tennessee Titans, I'm not sure. One of the football teams that had also gone vegan. So let's take a look at then the profile of a vegan. We all have our stereotypes about vegans. Well, let's just find out. Let's let the data bear out for us what a vegan is. So I'll type in here vegan. Unfortunately, the prompt gave me nothing. So that is unfortunate because Vega gives me Vegas, so that doesn't help. So unfortunately, vegan doesn't pull up anything that is useful or meaningful, which is unfortunate because it means that the survey by Simmons didn't feature a question on whether somebody is vegan or not. Again, that's unfortunate, but that's a reality of secondary data. You're always limited by the researcher's decision on what data to gather. So we know how to pivot. We've got to figure out again what is close to being vegan. Being vegetarian. Let's take a look at that. So what if you start typing vegetarian? Okay, so now you see some options showing up like Frankfurters and hot dogs that are vegetarian. Okay, interesting enough. Okay. And then there's a statement, lifestyle statement of I'm a vegetarian. Now, it turns out there are many options for this statement because this was a survey style statement with a Likert type scale with options like disagree a lot, disagree a little, neither, agree a lot, agree a little. Which means here we have people who agree amongst those who consider themselves to be vegetarian. There are those who agree a little and agree a lot. Let's assume that we want to gather data on both people who agree a little and agree a lot. One option is to use the any agree option. The other one is to take the more difficult road. Let's take the more tough road out here. So what we'll do here is we'll take in agree a little and agree a lot to the statement I'm a vegetarian as our definition of being a vegetarian. Okay. So I'll select agree a little. The question now is, I want to also include the agree a lot response to this to the survey statement I'm a vegetarian. At this point, you got to wonder, how should you combine the two? Should it be with an or with an and? Now, if you fill out enough surveys, you know that in a survey statement, you got to choose one or the other. So you cannot say I agree a little and agree a lot to a given statement. Quite naturally, you should now use the or option then here. I'm going to go back in and look for the vegetarian statement. This time it's going to be agree a lot. Pull that in. There we have it. I'll move these to the target. And notice our sample consists of 2,000 or so people out of about that represent 22 million Americans. Run this, and we can now learn more about this profile. We can learn that they comprise 9% of the US population. We can learn about their income, their age, employment level, and so on. You can, of course, always go into the dashboard and look at other options as well. For example, what websites are they visiting? This shows us the list of websites they have visited in the last 7 days, last 30 days. Let's go last 30 days. And within they're categorized into groups like shopping, business, and so on. Let me look at shopping here. And let's see what we can find out about the shopping behaviors of vegetarians. Now, what I'm looking for as I scroll through this list of e-commerce sites is the ones where the index is high. So the index tells us of, let's say 105 for Etsy is telling me that they're 5% more likely than 100, right? The index is scaled at 100, which means a typical American would be 100. That means vegetarians are 105. They're indexing above, which means they're 5% more likely than the typical American to visit Etsy.com. Okay. Nothing alarmingly high or low out here, which means they're fairly typical across all these different categories. I'm not noticing anything, any index that's really high or really low, which tells me again there. I am noticing here that thesaurus, okay. They're much more likely than a non-vegetarian to be looking at wikihow.com. That's interesting. So what about sports? Again, nothing out of the ordinary out here. The ones with asterisks by them indicate a very small and sort of like an unstable sample, because it's saying that there are very few people who make that choice. So it's not a reliable sort of measure. Take that number with a pinch of salt. All right, hopefully that was helpful then, taking a tour of Simmons Quick Reports option to look at the profile of a given market group. Thank you.